Hey everybody, welcome to the BRC podcast. I am Justin Musil. I'm excited to dive in tonight with one of my good friends, head coach, University of Minnesota, youngest head coach in the Big Ten, one of the youngest Division I head coaches in the country. Extremely bright dude. One of my really good friends. I know him well, and just led the Gophers to their first 30-win season since 2018. Has the program going in a phenomenal direction with recruiting culture, has really turned that program around in just a couple years, him just having had his second season. So excited to talk with him. He was the pitching coach prior to becoming the head coach there, but one of my great friends, someone that I think is a rising star in the coaching game. Let's go ahead and bring Ty in here and get to our conversation with Ty. What's up, Ty?
What's up, man? Good to see you.
Good to see you too, my man. Appreciate you coming on and taking the time. I know busy time, right? Exit meetings and everything you have going on. We were talking off the podcast. So you is this a breath of fresh air, man, or are you just needing some sleep?
Yes, um, that's usually the way that it works. I was just talking to my wife yesterday. I think I had my first off day since the day after Christmas. So a little bit of a breath of fresh air, a little bit of an opportunity to regroup and kind of set course for the new year. But also a lot of balls to juggle with exit meetings and graduating our senior class the right way and getting them on to whatever their next is, whether that's professional baseball or into the working world. And then obviously figuring out what next year's roster looks like. And a lot of that revolves around having conversations, growth conversations, development conversations, roster construction conversations with the remaining guys on our roster, and starting to turn our attention to the transfer portal and our incoming freshman class. So there's a lot of things going on right now. You'd imagine that it would slow down. It actually speeds up for a handful of weeks before it slows down, which is fine. I think you kind of need. I mean, it's honestly not that different than pitching or your throwing arm. You kind of need that deload period to ease into a little bit of a slower window. So I think all of our brains work that way.
Yeah, man. And it's interesting because tonight we're going to talk about the summer recruiting, right, and how to navigate that. It's changed a lot, and I think Ty, we talk a lot away from the podcast, but I think a lot of people just think that it flows right from your season and kind of just general recruiting, and there's not a lot of other things that are going on in your lives and in your work, right? And you just kind of laid it all out, all the different things that you're juggling heading into the summer. It's not simply what events you're going to be at. It's a lot of the things with your current roster. You have the transfer portal now, which is a big deal. So I want to kind of dive into that here in a second, buddy. But first, before we get to that, I know a lot about you. Obviously, we're close, but I'd love you to share more about your background because you have really risen in this game fast. A lot of people work, 15, 20 years to become a Division I head coach, let alone a Big Ten head coach. I'd love you to share more about your background, man, and just kind of that meteoric rise to becoming a Division I Big Ten head coach from where you came from.
Yeah, the story's unique, and it would be we'd be here really all evening, trying to go through all the different layers of what and why and how, the timing of things, the fortunate and even unfortunate circumstances of certain things. Really, the most brief version I can give is I showed up to the University of Minnesota in the fall of 2010, I believe it was. And I was a decent high school pitcher. Didn't have a ton of recruiting opportunities, but had enough recruiting opportunities to go through the recruiting experience and gain some knowledge of that. And had some smaller schools recruit me, had some Big Ten schools recruit me. Ultimately, decided I wanted to go to the University of Minnesota. Um, at a similar time, my father, who was a custom home builder, had gone through a difficult time in his professional career with the economic collapse that happened years before. And long story short, all of the savings that my family had done to pay for school was gone, and so it was sort of on me to find my own way through college if that was something that I wanted to embark on. And as many baseball families, players, parents find out somewhere along the way, and it's changing a little bit now, but certainly at the time, they don't have full ride scholarships for baseball players, no matter how good you are. So it was on me to find a place that I could go, but also a place that was going to let me work so that I could pay for school. And I found a great fit in a program with John Anderson in the University of Minnesota. It was everything I was looking for, academically, socially, and then obviously athletically. I'd followed the University of Minnesota, the baseball team, was a Gopher fan my entire life. But also allowed for me to have some flexibility to work doing lessons. I really started doing lessons long before the NIL era, where now they encourage you to sell yourself and your abilities. This was back when I had to get lawyers to just let me do 30-minute, hour-long lessons with high school kids or middle school kids, or run a small group lesson. Like there was a lot that went into just being able to make money so that I could pay my college bills. So I got into the University of Minnesota. I was invested in the program. I was making money in the morning and in the evening outside of my academic responsibilities and outside of my practice responsibilities, coaching players. Had a facility, small facility, that my older brother and I ran in the area that I spent a lot of time going to. So I sacrificed quite a bit from a college experience in that regard. Um, but it's something that I wouldn't give up. And along that journey, was sort of forced to mature rather quickly. Not just financially and responsibility and time wise and all of that stuff, but just learning how to communicate. If you want to give good lessons and get return customers and things of that nature, you need to learn how to recruit, and you need to learn how to communicate, and you need to learn how to follow up, and
Yeah.
a lot of different things that obviously have helped me along the way in my career. Never had any anticipation of coaching. I started with a degree in sociology. I have a degree in sociology. The focus was on criminal deviance. At some point, I wanted
Yeah.
to disappear from the world and become a clandestine CIA agent. Looking back at that previous version of me sounds unbelievable. But it was a thing. I mean, I that was what I was into. I had a
Yeah.
internship lined up. I was ready to go. I really enjoyed my academic time at the University of Minnesota. I learned a lot about law enforcement, a lot about sociology and the way that people and groups work. But like I said, never thought I would parlay into a coaching opportunity. I would say the change sort of happened. I think it was my junior year, maybe my redshirt junior year, when I had Tommy John surgery. So
Okay.
it was an unfortunate happening. I believe it happened the second or third weekend. It was months before I was able to get surgery. So I ended up getting surgery in like middle of May, and looking at the available recruiting, or excuse me, eligibility window I had. It was closing on me fast. I was going to risk losing 2 years when at the time you could take one redshirt year. That was all you got.
Mhm.
So with that, I was forced to really dive into, okay, I've got 8 months here to try to take what at the time was a 12 to 18 month recovery window, and pull out all the stops that I possibly could. So I was into a lot of what was considered like kind of freak outside, maybe non-mainstream modalities that are cool now.
Yeah.
Was I can say it legally, but it was peptides, it was red light therapy, it was EMF and PEMF, stuff like it was
Yeah.
diet and nutrition. and I just emptied the tank on all of that stuff and became absolutely obsessed with the human body, the way that it moves, the fuel systems that it runs on, the way it recovers. And along that journey, I started to realize how much of that I thought was being missed in just coaching, you know. Um, and started to take some of that stuff back to my teammates and say,
Yeah.
"Hey, I think we can look at this stuff and find more and better ways to be optimal." That coincided with my pitching coach Todd Oakes, who's a will always be one of my favorite humans that I've ever interacted with. But he was battling leukemia, I think for the second or third time. He eventually passed in 2016, like almost a month before my career ended. So between him not being around, having to take some leaves, and me sort of being willing to take over some of the coaching responsibilities, especially with some of these new ideas, John hired me basically the day that I graduated. And in
Mm.
many
Yeah.
cases,
Yeah.
your first opportunity at any level is an unpaid role. But he let me run the pitching staff. That was one of John's strengths, was that he was um, awesome at giving his coaches autonomy, and he trusted a 22, 23-year old with a Division I pitching staff. Um, and that was Max Meyer's freshman year. That was Pat Fredrickson's freshman year. Um,
Yeah.
and was able to work with, recruit, develop a lot of really talented athletes. And so I spent what ended up being 8 years as a pitching coach, and then was hired a couple of years ago as the head coach. And certainly learned a lot along the way. Um, Hardly feel like I've got it all figured out, but love the struggle, the
Yeah.
challenge, the arithmetic that is every single day in this profession. So, like I said, I could give you about hours and hours long on each one of those segments, but yeah, for not being all that old, I joke around with my wife. I've lived a lot of life.
Yeah.
Um, maybe at the
Yeah.
maybe at the detriment of my health at times, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I've certainly done a lot.
Well, and I love the background, man, and obviously we've known each other for a long time, but one of the things that does make you different, and we talk a lot about this, but you're definitely an outside the box person, so am I, and that's kind of where we connect on a lot of things. Is just you look at things and you see how to do things different, and you try to optimize those things in different ways. Like I even just think of owning a business. You've owned a business, right? And you have other experiences in life that has given you a good understanding of how to run things, uh, not just through a university, but just in general. And I think that's a major advantage to understanding how the real world outside of that landscape might operate. But I'm gonna kind of shift on you a little bit and dive into the summer recruiting stuff, because that's really what the conversation is going to go to. But for anyone watching, feel free to throw your questions for Ty or myself in the Q&A, and in the chat, and just I'll get to those as we go along here. But so Ty, one of the things I want to kind of get into with you is the summer recruiting, and this has changed immensely. We've talked about this a lot, but I want to just give listeners a general sort of thought process into what you are now thinking about your goals going into the summer when it comes to the portal, junior college, and high school. How are you separating all of that out? And what are your goals in your priorities to construct your roster for the coming months?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm an order of operation guy. So let me walk you kind of through,
Yeah. It's the order, right?
unironically, where we're at right now. Like I don't have to sit back and try to recalibrate. Like this is where we're at the start of summer.
Yeah.
We are setting course for new year. So this is very much appropriate for where my brain's at. So forgive me if I'm a little wordy and excited about this. I'll try to be as concise as I can. Um, the summer always starts with taking account of your current roster, right? And in our case, right now, as the season comes to an end, we've got to figure out what our roster is going to look like next year. Who's going to return because they have eligibility left? Who's going to enter the transfer portal? We have to look at draft potentials and place a projected value on each one of those guys. You're going to have some people that are high probability drafts. You're going to have some that are low probability drafts. And then you're going to have people that are anywhere in between. So you've got to sort out where your current roster is at and make sure that you're on a good course for short term success within your program. And then you have to look at the big picture. Then you have to try to figure out, okay, long term, where are we at? Each position from a need standpoint, who's becoming draft eligible this coming year? Who do we have incoming? Are they healthy? How quickly are they going to be able to help us? What sort of positional needs might they fill? And just making sure that everything is balanced the way that you want it to be balanced there. And sometimes you have to make really hard roster decisions. You know, it might be telling a kid that you were planning on coming in and making an impact. Might be having an honest conversation with them about a player that's returning that maybe we had anticipated getting drafted. You know, that their role may be different if they show up on campus. It might be having a conversation with somebody who's been in our program for a couple of years and hasn't really shown the on-field capacity that we had hoped for. Being really honest with them about our vision for them within the program. That's a strength of mine, is being able to have those hard conversations. I really enjoy them, as difficult as they can be for both sides, because I think it provides clarity. And as an athlete, not all that long ago, having a coach that, you know, didn't believe in you, having a coach that maybe didn't have a you know, plan for you or anything like that wasn't the scariest thing. It was not knowing if you were showing up every day for a coach who didn't think you could do it, or a coach that didn't have a plan for you. It was the unknown of what your coach, or in this case, GM, which is what I turn into at this time of the year. It was the unknown of what you were thought of. I think that would be most scary. So all of that being said, myself, my staff, we need to sit down and we need to figure out short term, which means next year's roster, and then long term, are we on track for where we want to be? And if not, what are our action steps to get there? And the action steps always amount to a few roster adjustments, and they always amount to a handful of people that, whether it's junior college or transfer portal, we need to get in right away to fill some gaps in our program. And
Yeah.
then long
So
term,
good, man. Yeah.
high school kids, you know, all that stuff you can keep pushing in the next year, the years following, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's so good. I think what's interesting is, man, have things changed, right? With the short term sort of view that roster construction has taken versus pushing way ahead. I have no conversations anymore about guys that are 4 or 5 years out. It's a little bit pointless for a lot of guys because it's such a short term sort of um, view on the roster construction of what's going to happen right now. I can't pretend that I'm looking out 4 or 5 years on a class. Not that guys are going to, you know, turn their eyes away from a good player or something that's within their state or within their area. You know, they might see it, remember that name, put them down in their system. But I want to talk a little bit about that because that has changed drastically, and I think that's really hard for people to grasp. That, you know, 5, 6 years ago, you know, we had eighth graders committing, and now we're in a position where it is really like guys finishing up, you know, their transfer portal guys that they're going to bring in, the junior college guys, and then focusing on just a year or two out at max. And that's really the focus now. Can you just shed some light on that, on the changes that you've seen and what that might look like as we, you know, as people kind of listen to you on how you may assemble your roster?
Sure. I think every head coach in the country is going to give similar, but their own version of
Yeah.
what that construction looks like, and a lot of that's going to be personal preference, but even more that's going to be driven by the resources that they have within their program. So everybody
Yep.
kind of has it's very much like Major League Baseball. Everybody has a different salary,
Yep.
cap, if you will, internally, and what they're willing to spend, and so because of that, you have uh, a lot of different ways that people look at building a roster. In our specific case, um, and again, these things change rapidly with NCAA legislation, with roster limits, a variety of different things. But currently, we are big believers in um, taking a multifaceted approach at building a roster. We believe that you need to have young, talented players out of high school, which means in any given class, you're talking between 6 and 10 players that are coming in that you expect to get something out of right away. I think that's another thing that oftentimes gets glossed over. There used to be time not long ago where you would take a kid out of high school, not fully expecting him to be ready to go to make a huge contribution in year one. Maybe you're going to redshirt him. Maybe you're going to give him limited opportunities. I think at this point, everybody in the country is evaluating high school players under the same lens as what they're viewing portal players or junior college players. You have to come in and be able to help us right away. They're if not, you can't have
Yep.
wasted time.
Yep.
So that's one of the components that clearly has changed. But we believe in a balanced approach where we are going to go try to find quality high school kids. We are going to go try to find kids that can help us right away, that are young and talented. Um, and then we're going to supplement those recruiting classes with some talented, more experienced, more seasoned kids out of the transfer portal. And I say kids, but it usually ends up being more of the
Yeah.
men type, right? The
Yeah.
21, 22-year olds. And for us, sort of the I would say the middle of the world that we live in, where from a resourcing standpoint, we're certainly not in the top 20 teams in the country, but we're certainly not in the top or in the bottom 20. Um, the guys we have access to are maybe those that have gone to the ACC or the SEC, and found out that the opportunity isn't as abundant as they had hoped for
Yeah.
there,
Yep.
and so they want to come back, if you will, and try to find a place where they're going to be developed, they're going to have an
Yep.
opportunity. It's not as professionalized. And then we have another group of people that come from the mid-major class or even Division II, Division III, NAIA, junior college baseball, that's looking to level up. And we
Mhm.
need to do a very good job of identifying players on both sides of that spectrum, that we feel like can help us at a very high level. So either players that we feel like we're undervalued, underutilized, at a quote unquote higher level at ACC or an SEC school, and then we need to find those at lower levels that are ready to level up and help us at a Power Four conference.
Yeah. And so much good stuff in that, Ty. I appreciate the thought and insight. I want to get to a question here as we kind of roll through. And Mark asks, so thanks for coming on. This is awesome. Appreciate the comments there, Mark. What's your philosophy when it comes to culture inside a clubhouse?
Ooh, culture is a
That's a
weird word for me. Like it
yeah.
kind of it culture like and Justin's
Right.
a recruiting guy, so you get it. We've talked about this before. Um, Culture and development, I think, are two words that are probably overused without context, without backing in a recruiting scenario. And like I said, oftentimes they're like nails on a chalkboard for me because, as I said, you're not going to find a team in the country that in the recruiting process isn't telling you how good of a culture they have. And you're not going to find a team in the country that's not going to tell you that they're good at developing. Um, the so what, the how do you do that, is the most important thing. So for us, culture all revolves around a very basic, a very simple, but a very hard statement to commit to, and that's tell the truth all the time, no matter what. Bottom line, period. Okay. If
I
we
love
can
that, man.
create a culture where coach to coach, coach to player, player to coach, player to player, I mean, you go through it, any context, any communication line, we are comfortable saying what we think at any time, and being okay hearing what others think, um, then we have set up a structure to have a good culture. Um, but if that is not 1A on your list of priorities, then I think it's all fake. I think it's
Yeah.
all a
Good.
facade to some
Yeah.
level. So let's create an environment. And when we talk about culture, like I said, it all starts with that. How comfortable are we telling the truth? We talk about that as a coaching staff all the time. We talk about a player in evaluation, and 4 of the 5 coaches are like, "Oh yes, 100%, love it, love what I'm seeing." And then you notice the one coach in the corner that's kind of quiet. What do you got? You seem like you disagree. And the easy thing would be to say, no, I agree with you guys. Let's just move on. We'll go after him. But maybe he's got a really important perspective on it.
Yeah.
And so it's become an often saying in our office. Our players use it often. Don't hesitate to tell the truth. There's a lot of fun and exploration that can come from that. And the second we start muzzling ourselves or muzzling others, it creates an environment where um, growth gets stifled. So
Yeah.
we let it fly. We let it fly. We encourage our players to let it fly. Um, Say what you think. Say what you
Yeah, can you
mean. Be
explain that
confident in
more?
it.
Because I know what it means when you say that, but, like, that means something to you, and that means something to your culture, and it does hit on Mark's question of, like, "Let it fly." What does that mean out to the outside world that doesn't know that?
Yeah. So I want to give my staff and my players the comfort to be themselves. That's to
Yep.
be independent, critical thinkers who have their own opinions, who can express themselves and the uniqueness of who they are and how they got there. Um, I want them to be comfortable being able to do that. I also want them to concede that they have to be comfortable hearing from people who have other opinions, who come from different backgrounds, who might share a different perspective or opinion. And that's the concession that we have to make is if we are going to have this open, tell the truth all the time, no matter what culture, um, then we've got to be willing to hear feedback from other people just as much as we can be eager to share ours. So we
Yep.
have to be really good at saying what we think. We have to be very good at thinking about what we're going to say before we say it because we take what we say seriously. But then we also have to be outstanding listeners. We have to be outstanding listeners because um, you're going to be able to gain a lot from the other people around you if you're willing to
Yep.
commit to that. So that's the whole structure
Yeah.
from a
I love
team
it, man.
culture
Yep.
standpoint, and then from there, I think it's way easier to build meaningful relationships. It's way easier to get on the same page. I mean, I'll just say it like words are weird, right? Human communication is weird, and especially when you're dealing with
It is, man.
emotional, high stress, high consequence situations, like you and I could be saying the same thing with different words, and somebody could hear what we're saying very
Yeah.
differently based
Yep.
off of the
Yep.
emotional state that they're at, right? Like so just like I said, being able to get to a space where we can share our thoughts, share our feelings, respect those, like that's priority 1A for building a team culture, if you ask me.
Yeah, I love all of that, Ty, and more. We've talked about this a lot. For anyone that's on, feel free to throw your questions in the chat if you're on the parent dugout. But so here's the thing: we've talked about this, man. Everybody wants to talk about the same sort of things that help in recruiting. Culture is one of those, as we've touched on. Away from this, culture is really something that is earned through what the culture is actually like, in my opinion. So if someone talks about culture being important, but then all the players talk about how toxic it is, then it doesn't matter what anyone else is saying because the reputation on it is just a toxic culture. And so I think that's one of the things that you've done an amazing job with is shifting that. And that takes finding the right guys, which when you're a new head coach, it takes a little while to figure out the guys that you click with that work in that setting. It's not saying that someone else may be wrong. It's saying this is what works for me. And those are the personalities that you're talking about, the communication and how we operate. Like clearly a team and how we connect with each other matters. In the short 2 years of being a head coach, how much have you learned on that, on the types of players that you want to fit where you're at, instead of coming in as a rookie head coach going into the recruiting process? Can you share that journey and that evolution, if you will, to understand what you're wanting in a player, makeup wise and tools wise?
Yeah, I think there's a certain element where we have to just concede there's always going to be an evolution, right? If we're
Yeah.
not learning
Yeah.
and we're not adapting, we're not changing the things that we're looking for, then we're doing the program a disservice. So what it is today, it won't be that tomorrow, and there's always going to be learning and growing. The staples that I look for, that I know fit with the type of culture that we have, and the type of identity. And I think those two things are tied very closely, right? Your culture sets your identity. For me, it's finding players that obviously have the requisite talent, right? They throw a certain velocity on the mound, they command the baseball a certain way, they have a certain secondary or off speed pitch. Hitting wise, they've got bat to ball skills, they've got power, they can field their position well. Like those are all basic requirements, and oftentimes those don't become distinguishing factors. It's trying to take 3 or 4 players that might fit that category and figure out which one or ones are going to be the ones that you pursue in the recruiting process. So then we go to the intangibles that you're talking about. We look for players in our program that are great communicators, that really enjoy talking about what they're doing, why they're doing it, can take feedback, can give you feedback on how they feel, and the application of our development process. So being a good communicator is number one. You can have a kid with all the tools in the entire world, and has talent, through the roof, but if you can't communicate with me, we're going to have a really hard time getting you better. So that's one piece of things. Okay. And number two is you got to have a motor. Like if you're going to play for me, you have to have a motor. And what I mean by motor is you have to show up with this tangible, like unwavering desire to just go, And again, that looks different
Yeah, I
for
love
every
that. Yeah.
positional group. It looks different for a
Yeah.
left-handed pitcher who pitches out of the bullpen than it does for a starting shortstop. Like you come to our
Yep.
practice and not everybody's running around the field with their hair on fire all the time. Um, but in your world, like you need to show up
Yeah.
and just fume energy, and give energy to others. If you show up and you're, I throw the crap out of the baseball and I spin a good breaking ball, but holy buckets, it's hard to get me started and I'm just a sloth around the field.
Yeah.
You ain't for me. Like you're just not
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
And again, that doesn't mean you're going to be a bad baseball player. That doesn't mean that you're not going to get opportunities at the next level. But going back to the culture piece, going back to the identity
Yep.
piece, those are important aspects of every guy in our program. Needs to show up with this like really visceral passion for what the heck we're doing on any given day. And that might be a
So good, man.
walkthrough.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I like that because it's getting an idea, a very specific idea of what you want, and you know this, Ty, but I've done consulting for Division One programs, and that's one of the first things I try to identify is just the separation of the two. What do you want in the human, and then what do you want in the player? And a lot of times that can blend over because you can love the tools and the players so much on the field, but if it's not your guy, it doesn't fit. But we're all, I think, as humans, if we were in a scouting role or a coaching role or anything, you flow to the tools and what they can do. But if it doesn't match up with the style of the organization, or in your case, the program and the university, it just over time that kind of can blend. So it's much harder. I think when people think about that, this is my point. I think when people think about that, they think, well, of course, you're going after good makeup guys and you want talented players. Like, it's not that complicated, but it actually becomes very, very specific in what that makeup actually is, though. And you kind of hit on it, like a high motor. That's one thing of 30 things you look for in the makeup that you're trying to match up. So it's actually very complex. So I appreciate you kind of taking us down that road, buddy. I'm gonna get to another question here. Melanie had a really good question. How do you create? And this is, talking about all this, it's about the players and the roster and what the culture. How do you create accountability without players shutting down? It's an amazing question.
That's a really good question. I think there's a lot of different ways to create accountability now, that might not be as established, but we found especially recent success with them. So, obviously, when you're talking about accountability, you're trying to get people, your players, feeling a sense of ownership for what they're doing, and not looking to point fingers, and blame people when things go wrong.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so accountability for us is largely set by, the minimum standards of the team, and again, going back to the culture, going back to the identity piece. I've found that punishments, generally speaking, don't work. They just it's hard to enforce them. Everybody seems to have a sort of a different story on what's going on and all that stuff. Like, accountability can be very difficult. So first of all, we like to find players who are self accountable, right? Ones who are their hardest critic, ones who
Yeah.
have some self awareness and can be accountable to who they are. So rather than have to develop that, we find people who already possess that skill. And then lastly, it actually seems kind of counterintuitive, but I found the accountability piece is a heck of a lot easier, when you develop meaningful relationships with players. Oftentimes, I
Great
think
point, man.
leaders, I'll be the first one to admit that there's been parts of my career where I've been eager to lay out a list of expectations, correct people when they fall out of line with those expectations. Um, and it turns into sort of authoritarian style of
Yeah.
leadership,
Yeah.
which is not where
Yeah.
I excel. I'm much better when we spend time and effort on the front end developing a meaningful relationship, having very honest conversations like we talked about before, and then being able to know that player and address, the accountability, the correction, whatever you want to call it, on a more individualized basis. I mean, I have, let's call it 36 guys on my roster. I've probably got 15 of them that respond really, really well to me yelling at them in any environment.
Right.
Like,
Right.
they want that, and if I don't do that for them, like, they don't feel the love. They're like, that's my love language, is when you yell at me, because you know that and then maybe the other half of them are like, don't yell at me, I shut down. I shut down
Yeah.
if you yell
Yeah.
at me. And again, we can dissect that. I told you I have a sociology background, and we all become pseudo psychologists when we take a job like this. But there's a lot of different personality types that respond differently to that stuff. So, um, again, it's not as simple as a 1, 2, 3 ABC
Yeah. Yep.
process, but the whole, like, okay, how do we get this thing started? And for me, it's like we have to take time on the front end to build meaningful relationships. I need to get to know Justin, and how was Justin rate? Who is your favorite coach, Justin? Tell me about him, right? I want to know that in the recruiting process. I want to know that when you step foot on campus, so that I have some indication about who are the people that have made you into, because you're clearly here for a reason. Who are your favorite
Yep.
coaches and how have they made you into the person that you are? And let's see if I can put tools in my belt so that I can utilize that communication style, that
Yeah,
accountability
man. Yeah.
style
It's I
when it
love
needs to
that.
be taken. Yeah, but
Yeah,
we're all
and when
emotional.
you
Like I fall short sometimes.
yeah,
Like I use the
yeah.
wrong tool for the wrong job. But the more that we can be on the mark with that, um, the better the relationships are going to be, and the more success we're going to have collectively as a group.
Yeah, and the thing is when you dive into all this stuff and you start thinking about kind of the whole platform itself, right? Of like your ability to speak and connect with these kids. It's kind of I mean, it's an honor for you, right? To be able to lead them. You're leading men, right? Young men. So it's a very important thing, and I think you take it really serious. But without the trust that you're talking about, that's built through the relationship, a lot of the other stuff never follows. And so I don't know if John Maxwell once said, people buy into the leader before they buy into the vision, right? And that's the truth. And so if they buy into you, then they're more likely to follow the things that you're trying to do with the program. And I see a lot of times where coaches, this is organizationally too, Major League Baseball, but they're trying to get people to buy into the vision instead of putting themselves out there and building those relationships. Um, and we just had Theo Epstein on the other night on Dirt from the Dugout, which is a part of the parent dugout, and he was talking about the relationships, and he learned like shortly after he became the GM of the Red Sox on like how important the relationships were, and he really started investing in that, and that's when he started seeing a lot of the things come together because he kind of knew the individuals, and to me that was that it's summarizing that quote of they're buying into him now, and then now his vision is kind of coming to fruition. So a lot of stuff there to unpack, man. So really good stuff. I'm gonna a couple other really good questions here, and then I'm gonna throw the kitchen sink at you, which I know you appreciate as a pitching guy. But let's get to Adam's question, man. So real quick on this one, what makes the University of Minnesota so special to you? Which is a very loaded question, probably, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. What do you got? What
Yeah,
do you got in 30 to 60 seconds on that one?
30 to 60 seconds. The University of Minnesota is a unique institution in the sense that you can accomplish anything that you want to, at the institution. Like we have every degree seeking undergraduate program that you could possibly imagine. We have the highest level of athletics and Power Four baseball right here. We're in the Twin Cities where there's a innumerable amount of Fortune 500 companies, businesses of any kind. Um, you're in one of the largest metropolitan areas in the entire United States. Like the most beautiful thing about the University of Minnesota is that you can do whatever the heck you want to do with your time on campus and your life beyond at the University of Minnesota. And I have
So good, man.
years and years and years of experience with players who have utilized that and decades of alumni who are connected to our network. And I'm one example of somebody that has used the
Yeah.
University of Minnesota as a springboard. But like I said, it's a really special place because how often do you find a place, an institution that offers literally everything you could want?
Yeah. Yeah. Great answer, man. I love to hear that. I'm gonna get to Mark's here. So how do you do growth planning with younger players, and how do you measure success?
So we spend actually in the recruiting process, we spend an inordinate amount of time evaluating players objectively. So we there's a type of recruiting that's done at certain places where it's just kind of like yes or no, right? It's dude or no dude. Is he good or is he not? We try to find the guys in the category of yeses, and then we try to put objective measures to them. So we've modified an 80 to 20, 20 to 80 professional baseball recruiting scale for college, both the pitching and the hitting side of things. And so we grade all of our recruits or potential recruits on this scale. And that goes into a development program with them. It's part of our decision making process and the type of aid package they might get. We walk through it with them on the recruiting visit if it gets to that place. And we have what's called a current evaluation of where they're at, and then an OFP, which is an overall future projection of where we believe they're going to get to in that calendar year. So that sets the table for everything when it comes to development. Where are you at right now? Where do we believe you can get to? Not just in words, but we're going to put objective measures on those, whether it's the fastball velocity or the exit velocity, or in a portal case, maybe it's in zone swing and miss or out of zone chase. Like, we're going to take every potential objective measure and find areas for opportunity there. In addition to the body building aspect of things, getting stronger, getting faster, becoming more healthy, which are always aspects of everything we do from a development process. So we set course with that. We track very diligently along the way. And then this time of year, when we're at exit meetings, we see how we did, and if we hit our marks. And that's I guess in like as short order as I can possibly give you, kind of the
Right.
our development process.
Right.
Yeah.
I
If
like
you
it,
came on
man.
one of
And I
our
want
recruiting visits, like you'd probably be like, I mean, we spend hours and hours and hours. Justin, you've had many
yeah,
clients who've done that with us, and we spend a lot of time sitting down and really giving you an idea of not just, hey, we believe you're going to become a better player when you come to our program, but we like to show our work and tell you how.
yeah. Yeah, you guys doing a great you're doing a great job with that. And I think as we kind of I'm gonna go to the kitchen sink here in a second, but I want to just quick go to this because I want to summarize the conversation of summer recruiting too and navigating that. I'm going to just give my little piece, my opinion here so that people can take something away from this. And then I'm going to turn it to you, buddy, to kind of add on to whatever you want to add on to with how they can be successful. So if you're a parent, a player going into the recruiting process this summer as a high school player, it it is different for every player. So don't focus on anyone else's timeline. I know that you've probably heard that before, but it's really important to consider that and think about that. It is your timeline, nothing else matters. So if you become the best player in your state and that happens your senior year in November and you kind of catapult yourself, it doesn't matter when you got there. All that matters is that you got there. And so what I want to say is when you go into the summer, have a really good plan, know what you're trying to accomplish, and then make sure that you're not overdoing it as well. Understand that the body needs to work through the summer. The player, if you're a player, you need to play games, but there is a point where too much is too much, and sometimes dragging yourself to another showcase, which I'm okay with showcases. I think they can be super productive, but just be really careful that you're going when you feel good, the body feels good, the arm feels good, so that you can show out. And if you're not in that place, don't go because that's what's being evaluated. And so just kind of take your time, go through the process, have a plan, be strategic about it, and just know that everybody has their own timeline. Ty, I'm going to kick it to you for just 30 seconds, and then I'm going to get to the kitchen sink on you, which is going to turn a little more personal. But I'd love you to give your 30 to 60 seconds on that for parents and players listening.
Yeah, very passionate about this. Start with an end in mind. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
take the time on the front end, and again, Justin, you guys do a tremendous job with it, being able to walk recruits through this process. But you have to have an idea of where do I want this thing to go. If you just embark on a commitment to doing the summer, then you're going to be susceptible to take every opportunity that's in front of you. You're going to cut checks to anybody that will ask for
Yeah.
one. You're going to end up playing too much baseball with no real target goal. That's when you start to see fatigue and exhaustion and injury and confusion and all of these things set in. When you set a realistic goal, and it might be a school, it might be a type of school, it might be a class of school. But when you set that, you at least set an endpoint to what am I trying to accomplish. If you just set out to try to get recruited, there's so many problems that can happen along the way, and so
Yeah.
many places
Yep.
that you can stub your toe. So having an end in mind, and being able to align yourself with somebody who's really familiar with the process is, I wouldn't just say invaluable, but it's necessary in today's world.
Yep. Yeah, man, I love that, Ty. And I want to get to one other question here. Thanks for that insight as we kind of get to the kitchen sink. But before we get to the kitchen sink, I want to go to this question because it's phenomenal. How much are your players' parents and family members involved with your relationship building with them? And do you find that difficult? That's a phenomenal question.
Yes.
Ty stump.
I'm trying to figure out a way to say this eloquently, because there definitely are parameters that need to be put around parents and parent involvement. Like when a player comes to play at a Division I Power Four program, you're an adult, right? You're an adult. That's your
Mm,
responsibility. Mom and dad are no longer there to make sure that you get up and go to class in the morning. Mom and dad are no longer there to make sure that you're doing what you need to at practice, or that you don't forget your cleats in the locker room. Like there has to be a true sense of, this is my thing. I am accountable to my actions.
yeah,
Mom and dad can support me and love me and should, but this is my thing. Okay.
yeah,
All that being said, in the recruiting process, and in appropriate times throughout the year, like parent, family, support system involvement um, is paramount. It's paramount.
yeah,
Number one, I just talked about building relationships. Like we are all products of our environment. We're all products of the parents that we grew up with, the people, our brothers, our sisters that we've surrounded ourselves with. Like I want to get to know them. Bring them on the
yeah.
recruiting visit. I want to see how you interact. I'll give a great example. We've got a kid on our team named Jack Bello, and so he was at Air Force, and then he was at Butler, and he's come here, and he comes from they're from Florida. Um, but mom played soccer at Boston College. Dad played baseball at Boston College. Um, and when this kid showed up, he showed up with his mom on his recruiting visit. We were sitting across from each other at dinner, and the mom started talking about her golf game and her tennis game, and they started going back and forth on who was better at golf and who could kick each other's butt in tennis. And then it was talking about all the siblings, who was the best golfer and who was the best tennis player.
I love
And
it,
like
man.
that 30-minute dinner conversation like sealed the deal. I was like, I'm gonna do whatever it takes to get this kid, because he comes from a competitive family. Like they show love
Yeah,
to each other in
yeah.
the same way that my brothers do. And that's like on the golf course, on the tennis court, playing ping pong. Like, I mean, the mom and Bella were like, they were like Alexandra and Bella, like they were going at it. And that was such
So
like,
good, man.
that was such a cool thing to see. And again, that's one example, but you find a lot of different examples of being able to learn from the family, about the family, interact with the family, and
Yeah,
it gives you really
yeah.
good insight to the type of player that you're getting.
Oh man, awesome stuff. I love that. And it also shows, as we kind of wrap that part of it up, is it also shows to be yourself when you're in front of coaches, right? They want to know who you are. They want to know who your parents are. And I think sometimes the idea of like we need to put on this like superficial sort of mask to like be like we're at some sort of interview. I honestly think it's best when people just go and if just be yourself, and if they like you, great. That's how they get to know you. So I love that story, man. I'm gonna get to the kitchen sink. These are supposed to be quick hitters, and then I'll end on the MVP, your most valuable person. So let's get to the kitchen sink though. So if you could be a professional in any other sport, what would it be?
Golf.
Yeah, easy one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, easy one, easy one. What are you, a scratch golfer, Ty? You and I haven't golfed yet together.
I have been. This job's not too kind to being a scratch golfer, but I have been
Yeah,
before. Yeah.
exactly, man. All right, let's go to the second one. What's your favorite city, buddy?
What's my favorite city? Minneapolis, Minnesota, hands down.
Oh, there we go. There we go. All right.
Am I allowed
So
to
we're
pick
gonna go.
anything else?
Yeah, let's go away from Minneapolis. What's your favorite
Fort
city
Myers,
outside
Florida.
of
Fort Myers,
Minnesota?
Florida. That's where I was married. Lots of good memories
There
in
we go.
Fort Myers,
Okay.
including getting married to my beautiful wife. Yeah.
There we go. All right. Shout out to your wife too. Um, what's something that you that most people don't know about you?
Ooh, something most people don't know about me. Um, Boy, that's a good question, Justin. You probably be able to answer that better than me.
You want me to come up with something for you?
I might need you to. Well, let's. I'm trying to think what guys give me a hard time for when they find out. I'm I'm not a music guy. I'm like all podcast, audio book, like talk
Yeah.
radio. I don't really listen to music, um,
Yeah.
and most of my guys find that they all think I'm a nerd because of it. I probably am, but they all find that fascinating. That
Oh,
one of
that's
my favorite
great,
things.
man.
I'm 33 years old, but I think I have the interests of like a 62-year-old. So that's unique, I guess.
Oh, it's so good, man. Yeah, I like that one. I would also throw in there, and I would be in this category with you, and this is how we connect, but our infatuation with the human body and healing and the
Yeah.
power of all the unique things that are out there. But yeah, man, yours is good. I like that. So last one. Are you a do-it-yourselfer or do you like to hire people?
Uh, it totally depends on what the task
Oh,
is.
come on, come on. Well, I mean, your dad's a construction guy, so please tell me you know some things.
He is, but I'm also I connect with my players a lot on this. I'm not very good at asking for help. And that's an area that my wife reminds me often I need to get better at. I've realized my limitations with home construction. I've screwed up, half started, never finished many of projects. I think I've given my pride away on those.
That's
Um,
so good, man.
like yard work and stuff like that, do it
Yeah,
myself. Like
yeah.
brute force ignorance, yes, I'll do it. Anything that requires fine motor skills and patience, like help me out on it, I'll hire somebody.
So Ty, when I this is probably about 10 years ago now, but the last time I ever took a project on myself, I had a whole toilet torn apart. It just was a complete disaster. It was like a 2-day deal, and by the end of it, one simple thing led to just a disaster sort of, uh, pulling apart of this toilet and trying to fix it, and from that point forward, I said, "I am not ever doing that again." Hired a guy to come over, a plumber to come over, and he had put it all back together, and it was like a 15-minute job for that guy, and I was like, "That is why I'm not doing anything else," because that guy, he was like, "What were you doing on this thing, man?" I was like, "I I don't know, man. I was just going after it." So,
I've been there. Yeah,
anyway,
I've been there
yeah.
more than once. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. So,
yeah.
all right, let's get to the last one, man. Your MVP growing up. So, MVP for us is the most valuable person in your life. And this is something that we focus on within baseball, but also you as a human. Who's that person for you, man? Who's your most valuable person?
So surprisingly, I mentioned him already. He was actually my college pitching coach. And don't laugh, but it probably took me until I got to college to really grow up. So when you talk about growing up and maturing and becoming Well, first of all, realizing who I was and then finding a way to extract the best version of me consistently. It probably took until college till I found that person. His name was Todd Oakes. He was my pitching coach at the University of Minnesota. He was the epitome of somebody who um, didn't didn't talk a lot, but said a lot. Everything he said was calculated and personal, and the love that he showed through his coaching is something that I aim to replicate every single day. So I'd probably have to say Todd Oakes for that one.
Mm. So good, man, and he impacted so many people along his journey. His fight, and his with his leukemia was just a very public thing that he took on, and he embraced that, and he impacted a lot of people through that. Awesome, awesome selection there, man. A great human that will always be remembered by many. That's for sure. But Ty, I
Yeah.
appreciate you, my friend. I appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast, and I appreciate your friendship, buddy. And I know we'll be talking soon, but thanks a lot for taking the time, pal.
Justin, thanks for having me. You guys are doing not just good but meaningful work in today's game, and hats off to you guys for everything that you do.
Thanks, brother. We'll catch up with you soon.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Ty. And just to wrap up here, join our community, the Parent Dugout. We have Dirt from the Dugout, live access to the best in baseball, how to succeed on your journey, baseball recruiting confidential. That's this, obviously, as you're watching it and listening to it. Ask Justin Ravi anything. You can come on and you can ask us anything. Any questions you have about the recruiting process, player development, anything that you want, you can ask us anything in there. Clubhouse Conversations. This is where you engage with other baseball parents on their journey, learn from the community. It's a conversation amongst the community. So go on there and check it out. A lot of videos and written content on there. Thanks a lot for checking out the podcast, and we'll see you soon.